The following recording comes to you from Anthology Film Archives in New York City.
Into a void in that last one, yes. In the first one, I had, let us say, photographs that I had made 10 years before. And at that time, I had believed that every one of them was a work of art. And I had, presumably, at that time, reasons for believing that. I thought they were works of art because they looked like Weston, or I thought they were works of art because they looked like Pollock, or I thought they were works of art, there I was, I was doing my best, for God's sake. And I looked at them 10 years later, and I decided they were trash, you see. Okay, but nevertheless, very much affection had gone into that trash. To have made a photograph in which I satisfied myself that I had done a Weston meant, to me at least, that I had reconstructed the conditions, the emotional conditions of making a photograph by Edward Weston and so forth, that I had got something out of it, all right, but it was a lot of garbage. And I thought, well, I'll throw it away. But then I saw that I had an opportunity in disposing of that detritus, you see, to make a real work of art. In the very act of getting rid of what I had formerly believed to be and was not. And each of those things is linked, to some particular, one thing which is actually this kind of, corny Dada plaster cast is made, in order to please a girl. I remember Stan Brakhage saying in Cincinnati that he started to make movies because there was this one girl he wanted to get to know, and he was too shy, to do that. So he thought, well, I'll make a movie and I'll put her in it. You see, well, that people do things for different reasons, and there were other, I think I talk about that in that film, about the reasons I did that. And yes, definitely, there is this, for me, this act, I guess, of purgation of things that I have in the past not only believed, but believed very, very seriously, about how things were supposed to be, or what have you, even, my own views, because they've worn thin at the elbows, yes.
But even when you made those photographs years ago, do you believe at the time that each one was a revelation?
Yes, yes.
And now, of course, you hope that the film as it proceeds is a revelation, and the whole film is a moment of revelation.
Yes.
At the same time, while you admit you were involved with parody in
the first tableau of
Justice,
Poetic Justice.
Poetic Justice. Are you involved with parody in Nostalgia?
Parody. Well, not so much parody, I think. I use the phrase serious parody to begin with, which is not making fun of something. It is an affectionate attempt to penetrate to the root of a style, let us say.
Okay, so in this
Joyce's a hierarchy of parodies, for instance. But
Nostalgia, there's an affectionate looking back at these works.
very much so,
Right.
very much so.
And
But also for me too, a lustral public act of contrition for what I now feel to be certain callownesses, for which, in my view, say when I was 23, for which I do not dislike myself, but on the other hand, it's, my self-portrait at the age of 23 is a caricature of, the vain young man, photographing himself
But it's also clear that you've developed, the film makes it clear that you've developed and transcended, this callow period of artistic endeavor.
Well,
At the
I
end,
hope so.
At the end of the film, at the end of Nostalgia, we begin discussing, while looking at the last picture that's shown, we're told about the picture that's shot in the alleyway and the reflection, and you mentioned it before, people anticipate this revelation,
yeah.
and then it goes into brackets, and you're left with the picture that you have in your mind. There's another picture that, the words elicited in your imagination. Now, in bad art that deals with revelation, one moment mysterioso takes place instead of mystery, and then at some moment there's a denouement, then there's the revelation. Aha, so and so, whatever.
Yes, yes.
This is
The head of St. John the Baptist.
Okay, and I think to a serious person involved in finding the truth, this is a satire on what revelation is. This is a painful, not serious, but an exploitation of this need to find the truth. When the revelation takes place.
Yes,
in this
yes,
moment,
absolutely, yes,
state.
yes.
Okay. What happens at the end of that is that of Nostalgia is I feel that my sympathies have been touched. They've been asked for. You've made a move for my sympathies, and they were given, and I'm given in good confidence. Really like went with you through a series of photographs and a series of reminiscences, and I realized how pregnant with experience each one of these flat statements actually was. At the end, there's this melodramatic build-up towards the moment of revelation, and then it's cut from view, and I felt very insulted. I felt at that point the film went to another thing, maybe satire, again, or parody of here's the moment of revelation, a parody of that kind of film. Here's the moment of revelation, but at the same time, I wanted, when you've got people who are going to go this far with you and really take you seriously, why pull on them? Why would they be interested in this joke? Even if they get on the joke with you, what for? Is it really amusing? If they don't get on the joke, then it's simply, an abuse of confidence.
Although I feel that that's in all through in the film, and I feel the glove at the end of Poetic Justice is the same.
Yeah, I want to talk about poetic justice, but I'd like to hear about this one. It comes across to me as like, letter at the last moment, some kind of something for one's friends, rather than something a conversation piece has just happened, and what happened to the work of art that I've given myself to. That I was letting occupy me and be fulfilled within my consciousness.
But why then? Okay. Having on each occasion that let me try to frame this now. This is very important. You have always been led to believe that there will be a revelation.
I stopped going to movies a long time ago.
Yeah. Okay. But that is a form. That is a kind of development which is common throughout our culture. The punchline of the joke or what have you, right? There are innumerable human acts which lead up to a tearing aside of the veils, or a sweeping away of the cobwebs, or what have you, and then to see what? Okay, and most of the time, what one sees is very much less than what one expected, let's say.
It's always less because it can be seen.
Okay, but what is missing, I think, is in this whole thing, is that the point of the joke, let us say, which, you know, with its punchline, is not the punchline itself. Because, I mean, if that were the case, then we could simply utter punchlines and, you know, just pop the, I mean, you know, when I have revelations, or I am given these, you know, these revelations, I anticipate them all along. If I were simply given punchlines, I would feel cheated of the telling of the joke. So that it appears to me that the meat of the situation is in the process of coming towards the revelation, of approaching it, you see,
Well,
ever so closely.
That's not what's happening in your film, because, you know, a nostalgia, you know, it is revelation. You know, these, unless, you know, I'm really that naive, that, you know, I've been faked out, all, you know, not just in the last episode, but I was, you know, faked out all along. I felt that my confidence was gained, you know, I believed you, and then, you know, you began in the same, you know, the same manner.
I told the truth.
And pulled me into, you know, a parody of Blow Up, you know. Which, you know, I don't know whether you saw the movie, but you just, you know, that's what's happening
Yes.
there. And then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you did a Blow Up or any other mysterioso, you know, fake revealing of pseudo, you know, mystery. You know, this person faked out. You know, you had me and took me. Now, if you want to, you know, teach me a lesson about the movies, I don't know, you know, if you think that, you know, people who are coming to look at a work of art need a lesson about the movies. Anybody who's really been with you doesn't need that kind of lesson. And it's a very distasteful thing to actually have been involved with Revelation and to, you know, go back, you know, that kind of giant step, go backwards that kind of giant step, and, you know, and be left to a cheap, tasteless experience at the end.
I don't think you're reading me right. I mean, what I am attempting to do, rather than to, I don't think that mysteries can be revealed. I think they can only be profaned.
No,
In fact,
mysteries can be revealed as mysteries. See, that's what people do. They reveal mystery. It doesn't change. It doesn't become anything else. It, you know, becomes clearly mystery.
And what
mystery is made clear as mystery.
What happens though? I mean,
You know,
what happens when you really?
The response is not curiosity, but awe.
But what happens when you know, let us you know, take as an example I don't even know what, you know, a religion or something, in which one goes up through a hierarchy of training or something like that, and comes then finally to the last initiation, and the doors open, and the room is empty, you see. Do you then feel cheated by the empty room? I mean, I have not, I think, you know, promised you arpege, or promised you anything and given you arpege, you see. I mean, all I have, I mean, well,
the work up to that point is never a promise.
my
The work up to that point is always a given. And at this point, even exclusively become, you know, a quick promise. Up to that point, before that, it's all given. There really are things to experience. You know, it's really there.
what,
It's not a tantalizing. It's a given.
I mean, if that is true, if in fact I have simply, you know, brought out a papier-mâché representation of the head of John the Baptist on a platter, then what you're suggesting in a way is that I hardly even know how to express it, you see. I mean, I understand also, because I have seen the head of John the Baptist brought out on the platter, and know that it's a fake and so forth. if I could believe that I had done that, I would feel that I had sunk very far in corruption. What I believed I was doing was releasing you at that moment to your own imagined terrors, if you will, in that situation.
Well,
No, I'm not trying to, listen to me, I'm not really trying, I'm not luring you on, with the carrot, and finally throwing the carrot over the cliff. And I don't think this film, in its whole substance, is involved in manipulation of that kind. I don't think it's involved in manipulation. I think it is involved in kind of direct participation.
The last speech to me is a sort of switch into manipulation after one is actually not manipulating but giving. Okay? But actually after revealing. And suddenly, this joke is played.
I think it's not a trick or a rude joke or anything like that. I think it's something that is better. It makes it better. It's beyond. It's not just giving you another photograph. It's giving you something more. It's giving you a mystery.
No, it's giving me histrionics. Mystery. I revere mystery. So I don't like this, this kind of papier-mâché, mock-up of mystery. I resent it.
I don't believe I did
No,
that.
this is
What can I say?
mystery. Mystery is every one of those.
And
pictures
I'm now verging on the feeling that you are willfully misconstruing this because, we have talked about it.
No, we didn't speak about
We've
this.
gone 3 passes through it at this moment, and you are insisting that I have brought in the head of John the Baptist, and I am insisting that it is not.
No, I'm saying that,
my view that I have done so, and so we are loggerheads. Now,
I feel
where do we
that
go from here?
It becomes, a clever thing for an audience, and it stopped being, a work that a person makes because they need to make a work. At that point, I think it became aware of an audience, and went into histrionics, history and histrionics, from experience into this and not be dead.
Well, I mean, if that is true, then in the 9 months after I completed Zorn's Lemma, when I undertook to make this film, I somehow became wholly corrupt, because that is the only interpretation I can place on it.
I don't know it's correct.
Yeah.
Well, there is a particular unique tone to that film, which for me is the same as, or related to, Poetic Justice, and a similar problem. That is, in both, it hovers between, without being parody in a cheap sense, for me, it always hovers on a certain thing which I don't know how to describe. That is, I can say it more clearly in Poetic Justice. How seriously does one take the story that one is always about to fall into, especially in the 3rd section where you really do, in a way, get into it. I mean, one is always poised between knowing, between what you know as a viewer of this formal cinema work, not to get trapped into, say, just reading the story, or in nostalgia, not getting trapped into just seeing these as evocations of the history of these photographs, just one thing out of phase. And there's always like a thin, it's a kind of irony, I just don't know what word to use with it. But it may be that at that end moment of nostalgia, especially, and also in a different way, by this throwing down of the glove, I mean, you really snapped up into, if you did fall over one way or the other, you might miss it. I think, that's especially true of Poetic Justice. If you say, don't pay any attention to to what these shots say, and just look at it as an image then of course you've in fact fallen off on one side, and if you do the other, you've fallen off the other side, and there's this like thin rail you're riding. And
I'd like to ask, Hollis, if he feels it's correct. Well, it doesn't matter. I guess one of the reasons I'm interested in looking at works of art is for revelation. To feel more, know more, experience more, and I suppose it's right and proper that somebody get into the experience of digging revelation, and that this appetite, the thing they're looking for in film, be thrown back at them. They do get a slap in the face. If you're entering the frame, or gradually getting away from what's there, what people seek, to find something else, then I can see where we right and proper to even to slap the person who's looking for an experience of revelation.
I don't mean to slap anybody in the face, but is it not also a revelation of a kind when you reach a certain point in experience and you find that you're looking down into an abyss, you see? I mean, has not something also been revealed to you when the bottom falls out?
But that's the fake abyss. The abyss is when you simply see everybody's life going on, and 10 years have passed. It's all taking place in the abyss. The reason that it is that it's so touching and precious. So, the edges are always shaded with the the presence of the abyss. It's always there. Everything takes place in the abyss. And then to be given this fake adventure story of this man, it's like a joke on a subject that I don't have the likeness for. I'm not that game. I don't go into sick jokes. I don't have the capacity.
Well, if that particular abyss is as far as you're concerned, a fake adventure story, I'm sorry, but at the end, for me, of spinning out, 6 or 8 years of my work and my life, and finding out that it did not add up to anything but a bottomless hole. It was not a fake adventure story as far as I'm concerned. There was.
I think myself clear. Okay.
You have. Yeah. You did make yourself clear.
You're not really replying. Not replying in light what I think what I try to express. I'm saying the things that were there, even if they were bad photographs, are like they were precious and touching because the character, the real of this, was always present. There's things were acts of courage, within, especially over the abyss at all times. And then
okay.
Understand?
Yes.
The real abyss is there, not just nothingness, but something taking place within nothingness, and thereby becoming precious. Something asserting itself against nothing, and thereby being precious.
You're assuming, for instance, that when I'm giving the account of that last photograph that you do not see, the whole thing is a fabrication. I've made it up out of whole cloth, you see, in order to trick you up. Now, what happened, in fact, is that was something I saw. It was a photograph that I wanted to make. I didn't have a camera. That much I made up, and I didn't make it. It wasn't a question of seeing. It wasn't a question of seeing the reflection in the real situation. What was reflected was a piece of blue sky. It was in a dark tunnel. It's a round circle of it. In fact, but it was a photograph I didn't make because at that time I really had stopped making photographs, and in fact I did not make any more. And that was the end of that whole thing for me. In fact, it was completely empty. There were no more still photographs for me to make, or at least at that time there weren't for a good many years afterwards.
Well, maybe that's that reason, they didn't take it. They went away from the concrete and became a hokey drama. Anyway, I guess I made
Well, I
my
think
point.
you've made your point abundantly, yes. Yeah.
It's something very similar to mechanicism. One thing bothered me, one more specifically, was the bottom, at the end of the, I don't know,
Poetic justice.
what I just pages.
Yeah.
And it appeared to me, I don't know if I got the whole meaning of it. I've been sitting here listening to other people talk, and also been thinking about how I felt watching the film. While I was watching it, I was consistently hit with the idea that he was very anti-cinema or anti-film as what my conception of what filmmaking is. In that it seemed that everything, not everything, but many things were very out of sync, so to speak. Pictures with sound, using the medium of moving pictures, still pictures, putting a black space up in the frame and all that stuff. And I bought that. I received it. The glove was a very real prop to me. And unfortunately for me, it only was a prop, but I didn't see what right it had in the film. Because it seemed like the film didn't need a prop at that point. That particular ending, you had no problem. It almost was, I wouldn't say contrivance to end the film, but it just seemed inappropriate sometimes to me. I was just, if you could
Well,
just, shed some light on it for me as to whether you consciously work with the film.
that's a,
It just seems that there's a, I just want to make this point, it seems that you have a very real understanding of the medium yourself as an artist and use it that way. But also, this other influence, maybe what Father Ken, what he said, or love for me, just seems to be playing at odds with this other things you do.
well, the glove. Okay, the film slowly precipitates into a kind of what? There is a kind of floating I, a hypothetical filmmaker who is just as ambiguous a person in the film as the other two people, the you and the your lover person, whoever they are. And the film begins, if you will, the whole action of the film takes place. The laying down of all these descriptive titles on the very table where the photographs are mysteriously delivered, right? I mean, there's a little table by a window, and in shot number 4 it says that there's a potted cactus and a coffee cup.
The light doesn't change. About that in my film. The shadows don't change, the lights remain the same. And I recognize that in the writing, but it seemed.
Well, I mean, it isn't really by a window, you see. The table on which it's being shot isn't really by a window. The light is much closer. You know, you can kind of deduce that from the fact that the shadows splay a little bit. They're not parallel to each other. So yes, again, I mean, quite openly, it's artifice. It was shot indoors with a couple of diffused light bulbs. There's nothing in it that is in the sort of conventional sense of kind of really going to Egypt and doing the scene in front of the Great Pyramids that is real. It is all imaginary.
So why just
So that at the very end, the last shot, as you will recall, the last two are 239 close up. Glover's hand is holding a still photograph of my own face. My hand covers a photograph of my face. Well, I mean, the entire thing has been, completely imaginary. I imagined the setup, and, to some extent or other, you have been imagining something or other. I felt that to resolve the whole thing, to end it with a kind of change as visible, as physical, as the presence of the cactus and the coffee cup are, I wanted then to do a positive physical thing in the situation, you see. Well, if I had put my hand, my actual hand, over the sheet of paper, then my feeling was that would somehow have reflected all the way back through it to imply something different about it, to imply that there was a real hand, you see, kind of a real toad in this imaginary garden. So what I did was simply to use a thing which was in a way to my hand as the table was to the imagined table. You see what I mean?
I really couldn't appreciate that. I was looking for the word beta, the last page, and the picture you were drawing to me, that I had conjured up in my own mind, which is, I think, probably what you were trying me to do for the whole thing anyway. The picture I had drawn up of you covering your face with your hand was so much better than love that I think that's why the question was such a letdown. Beta would have been such a nice way for that image to drift out of my mind, and would have been a better way for me to see the film. Love, to me, was home. It was like whatever it was, and the whole film was so involved with letting your mind wander. It reminds me of like why people like radio so much. People like radio because they can use their imagination. And this film was radio with visuals instead of hearing. And I was using my imagination by the visuals.
But I mean, then
all of a sudden I couldn't use it.
okay, well, but then on the radio, I appreciate the point, but then what I'm thinking about is that on the radio, for instance, when the horses go clop, clop, they're actually, banging 2 half coconut shells, and when you hear the thunder, they're twirling BBs inside a balloon, and things like that. And that also is it is a fake. It doesn't exist. It's not real, you see, any more than, the evoked pictures are real, you see. I mean, I just felt that rather than a real hand, something that was just as imaginary, just as much a token of a hand as a piece of paper that says bedroom lovemaking, outside the window is an inverted enamel saucepan, is a token of, just the merest tinge, you know, of what a real image of that would be, you see. That, I mean, I mean very much for that rubber glove, you know, as it were, to reach out in its rubbery way and sort of haul the whole thing back to, you know, however you may have felt about this, you really just have been looking at, you know, these successive pieces of paper placed on a table. And I would have felt it was hokey if I really had finally, you know, broken through, you see, I mean, as if I really had, you know, like some kind of deus ex machina in the flesh, you know, actually reached, you know, with my hand into this universe with something that didn't belong in it. I mean, the idea of the glove was that was the kind of hand that belonged in that universe. You follow me?
Yeah, and I don't even say that.
I mean, I'm not saying, for instance, that it is that it is not an abrasive image. You know, I mean, I think it is an abrasive image because there is perhaps still this, you know, even as the thing sort of dwindles down in the last section into a release from, you know, this world of illusion or what have you, this purely imaginary universe. Still, maybe there is a kind of lingering expectation that you will, you know, that there will be carnality. You see, that there will be, you know, it will precipitate in some real and fleshly thing, as almost as a reassurance that you haven't imagined it all. You know, I mean, at least a hand really did come and do it finally. But I felt that would have been, you know, intrusive. It would have busted the bubble, so to speak. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Wasn't the bubble burst though when you talked about the cactus and the coffee on the table near the window, and your image was, you know, the cactus and the coffee, you know, on the table?
Well,
Well, I don't know why you brought that in, and then also brought it in on the sheets of paper.
I thought first about doing the film as the way the translated, or not even translated, but the titles of silent films are. They're just type. They're just blank graphic type on a frame, and that's all. But then I thought really, you know, that I wanted, even if it was illusory, I wanted the thing to have a kind of flesh, to, you know, whatever thing it was that brought up the imaginary film, let's say, the imaginary movie, to have some kind of real substance, and then, you know, to generate at least a suspicion that a kind of paradoxical suspicion that, how can I put this? That something or other like what seems to be delineated in the imaginary movie had taken place. You see what I mean? That there is, you know, some kind of basis in reality for this imagination. I'm not saying this very well.
I think that imaginary movie did take place in everybody's perception of film.
Okay, well, I mean, you know, I mean, I hope it did. I mean, otherwise you're just, I mean, if it does not, you know, and if it is not then kind of weighed in certain ways, then it obviously has got to be the most boring experience in the world, you know, because it really, I mean, I remember seeing, there's a little series of books called Classic Film Scripts, all of which, all the ones I have seen, are you know, kind of years and years after the fact. There is this shot-by-shot description of Potemkin, for instance, which says things like a boat. And if you just, I mean, it's very hard to cut loose from that, you know, and from your many seeings of Potemkin. But if you look at a line of that description, what just comes out of it as an image really doesn't sort of resemble the shot in Potemkin at all. I mean, there's nothing in it that makes me see the shot. I see, you know, some little sort of gestalt boat that has been, you know, floating in my mind, you know, since I started drawing little boat pictures or something like that. I mean, it's a very crude cartoon phantom compared with that detailed and intricate sort of thing. But I've always thought, or I began to think at least, that, you know, it might be possible really to make a film that, you know, that would come out of one of those things in an imaginary sort of way and get to be a movie. Yeah. Yeah.
Just to go on, when you show your films, you something that will walk out. There's something of a click in your head that says something about the people that are walking out, or are you involved watching the film, and do you in fact watch every moment? Did you in fact watch every moment of the night show with the? See, I know that you know what's in there. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering,
Well,
knowing that, whether you.
that varies a whole lot. I mean, tonight I certainly didn't. I didn't stay through the whole thing. I walked out several times because something happened in connection with one of the films that disturbed me very much.
What was it?
One of the two people in the second film felt horrified and humiliated, and you know,
That it should be shown.
well, what I had done, felt that, you know,
She had never seen the film cut that way.
yeah, I'd never seen it at all, and was very upset, and that was something that I had not anticipated in the least, and so I also was upset. So I didn't stay. I mean, sometimes I do, and sometimes, you know, looking at my own films can be very intense, and sometimes I just goof, you know, and it's not very intense, and, you know, I mean, so my own feelings about them are you know, highly variable and mixed.
And seeing somebody walk out.
Well, that also then has got to be very variable and mixed, you know, I mean, naturally, you know, I would love it if everybody stayed always through all my films and enjoyed them and so forth, but they don't, and sometimes, you know, if I'm feeling fragile, I feel terrible, you know, I think, you know, you know, everybody hates my work and I'm a shit or something like that, and that varies a great deal, and sometimes I think, well, you know, screw you, you know, I like it, and if you don't like it, well, you know, Tom P, you're too bad, or, you know, there's all sorts of scales up and down. I mean, you know, it's also, you know, a long, sort of demanding evening. And who am I to say that people have to, you know, answer to every demand that's made on them? You know, I can't and don't. There are probably films that I know are wonderful works of art that I personally have very serious trouble with, and I either don't, you know, kind of sit through them, or I don't really pay attention to them. You know.
I have a question about the films you're talking about. It seemed, the way the words were coming out, that it was random looping to a very great degree, in that words seemed to be like cut off in parts, where the phrasing, the repeating.
Oh.
I was curious how you did it.
No, it's not. No, it was done mechanically. It was done that is to say, in a purely material way. Nothing was looped. I got 3 copies of the track and 3 copies of the picture. And there were specific points at which I knew, you know, from many hearings of that tape, that there were there were turns, you know, that I saw that it could take, and those then had to, I mean, if you, well, there's a thing, for instance, where, there are a lot of them where both of them repeat a word or a phrase, the same word and phrase as if to taunt each other. Where you know, I wanted those, for instance, to become clots of, you know, of sound. And what I really came down to doing, how to put this? It was a kind of imperceptible, well, it's very perceptible, but kind of shifting from one staggering pattern to another, sometimes very abrupt and sometimes slowly, to get it sort of to do what I felt it wanted to do. So that after the kind of opening thing of the picture on the first roll, let's say there's a long opening sound thing, which is 39 frames forward, 26 frames back. And then immediately after the picture comes on, it sort of starts out all right and immediately falls apart. And then kind of picks itself up again and goes along at that same rate through the whole first picture roll, and then abruptly after that turns into 3 repeats of each thing, which are much shorter.
Is there a light off the second roll ever?
No, there were 2 100-foot rolls.
The second roll, I thought it was the shot, the light that you couldn't see in the first roll. I thought it was two shadows in the first roll, and one in the second roll. Is that possible?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, one is very faint. The one shadow is very faint, and the other is very harsh. But no.
I just thought that each of them had 2 shadows in the first roll, and each of them had 1 shadow in the second roll.
Yeah.
Just like to say, you know, I think it's a tremendous film, and I hope that Barbara gets out of this reaction to it. I was surprised to hear she reacted that way also. I don't understand it unless I just don't understand it at all. Unless she's forgetting that it's a movie. That she acted in the movie.
I mean, I'm amazed, especially because I've lived with that material for a very long time, and I've come to cherish it as one of the really great improvised acting performances I've ever seen. You know, as a work of spontaneous artifice.
It's also like, you know,
it's
even like
amazing.
stated within the film about going in circles.
Oh, yeah.
From the beginning.
Yeah, the things that, you know, that rhyme so absolutely with the...
Yeah, it says what it is.
Yeah. This is getting us absolutely no place, and I can't go on with this, and so forth, yeah.
Someone I don't know, should, you know. Also, like very much, I saw the videotape, and, you know, what's it called?
Traveling map.
Traveling map, right. And I like the videotape very, very much, and it's very exciting to see it. It's much, much sharper as film, and to be able to see this
In
size,
scale,
to be able to
yeah.
see this incredible movement going on.
Yeah,
and
right
it's-
down
it's
into it.
so rich. One of the problems, however, is, you know, with the film being seen, you know, going from film to film to film without a break, because it was, you know, it being one film in 6 parts, 5 parts right now. It's very difficult to keep, to be able to absorb.
I know it
that
is.
much.
I know it is. I know.
Yeah, and I knew that I had no trouble, even on a little video set, you know, watching this film a number of times, just by itself.
Yeah.
It was thought, and I'd dig it all the way, and then I'd
Yeah.
see it again. But this time following, you know, the intense demands of the previous films. It was, towards the end, I was just a blogger. I just couldn't absorb it anymore. I saw things going on, but I saw them out in space, you know, I couldn't react anymore.
Does that sort of accumulate, do you think, as the whole bunch of them goes on?
I think so.
That's really tough. I don't know how to handle that. You know, where do you make a break, for
I think
instance?
it's that your film, the fact that it's in sections, that you can still get across your idea that it's, you know, one film, letting people you know,
Yeah.
build up a little reservoir of energy again, you know,
Yeah.
some space again within between sections.
You know, there's a certain kind of thing that happens where, I've only shown it continuously, you know. Well, this may be the second time, you know, that all 5 things have happened. There was a thing at Millennium in November where 4 of the 5 were shown. And it's invariably, you know, 5 minutes into Traveling Matt that everybody decides to go have a cigarette or something like that.
It's a pity.
But I mean, I don't know how to even handle it, because, you know, I feel that Traveling Matt is really kind of the pivot of the whole series in a way. That is the point, you know, upon which it balances. And I also understand the whole thing where, or, you know, at least with a couple of audiences that have seen it, certainly this was true with the Elgin, where everybody decided immediately that was going to be, you know, kind of the Largo of the film. That was going to be you know, that was going to be the long, slow, boring part. And everybody would check out at that point. They'd go to the toilet, or they'd go for a walk, or they'd, you know, go get popcorn, thereby missing, you know, what I feel is, you know, something. Well, I mean, it certainly is as much a part of the series as, you know, the other 4 parts are. And, you know, I don't even know, you know, I mean, what happens if you make a 10-minute intermission, you know, after the second film or something like that. Then, you know, everybody comes back, and then do they all go out again? You know, I mean, you know what I mean? And this is, you know, this is looking forward to being a 6-part thing, and being, you know, without real changes, 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Well, you know, we don't have to have a break after each, you know, film necessarily, but at some point, you know, I think they'll feel it out with different audiences. At some point, you know, this is about how much they can get for a while. Also, if, you know, if someone's mentioned before, someone said, well, you know, people would go and, you know, not come back. Let them go. Better
Oh,
they go
well.
Then during, you know, when the film is on, disturb, you know, people who want to stay.
Yeah, well, that's not a, you know, that's not a consideration. I mean, this is the first time I've ever done anything, you know, where I've really faced this kind of problem. You know, I've faced the sort of specialized problems you have, you know, when you start getting beyond 60 or 70 or 90 minutes or something like that. I mean, most things, I mean, the movies build in their own opportunities, you know, at least for you to be out to lunch in your mind, you know. I mean, it's sort of a, you know, there's a barrel, there's a shovel of sawdust, and there's a grape, and there's a shovel of sawdust, and there's a grape, and so on, and you end up with a barrel that is labeled grapes and is mostly sawdust, you know, and you wait for, you know, like Dirty Harry hits some guy in the mouth and his teeth splatter all over the place. Okay, you're kind of up for that. And then, you know, the film gives you 10 minutes, and you can, you know, you can go away, you know, you can relax. They don't, you know. And I mean, it's a very new problem, I think, you know, that film art has to deal with, and I don't know. I mean, nobody seems, you know, to solve it. I mean, Michael Snow's new film, The Central Region, runs for 3 hours and some minutes without a break. And I mean, you can't go away. I remember the first time I saw The Art of Vision, you know, it was 4.5 hours, and I was sitting there, you know, and it became, I mean, that film is so dense, you know, so infinitely dense, that I began, you know, to want a cigarette, and I literally, you know, for the third of a second, I really would have to, you know, take my eye off the screen to, you know, to locate the light on the cigarette. I didn't want to do it. I begrudged it. I mean, that would have been 8 frames or something like that at the end of 4.5 hours. You know, I mean, I was wrapped around myself. I had to piss, and my eyes were like that, you know. And
Then you'd have to do the whole thing again, you know, those 8 seconds.
exactly, yeah. And, you know, if you talk to Stan, he says, well, I don't watch that film that way, you know, in my house. You know, it sort of runs, and, you know, there's the assurance that you're going eventually to, you know, you're going to see it, you know, you've got several passes to it, you're going to accumulate it, you know, and finally you'll get all the legs under the table, and the table will stand up. With Snow's film, that's really tough. Now this, you know, I have just all unawares, you know, unable somehow to profit even from my own terrible experiences with other people's films, or my own discomfort and fatigue and so on. I just drifted into it myself, and I don't know quite how to do it. And it seems to me, you know, do I think of it as a grand opera in 6 acts or something like that? You know? If so, then, you know, is it like Wagner, and we have a morning session, you know, of Die Goethe-Dämmerung Part 1 and an afternoon session of Die Goethe-Dämmerung Part 2 or something?
I think it's possible that, you know, one goes back into things. You know, to pick up,
Yeah.
you know, when you don't finish one piece all at once, you know, but you pick it up again, you stop at a certain point, pick it up again, and there's a transitional moment, and then you're back in.
Like, well, I mean, yeah. Are you talking about the movie or the book?
The book, there's,
Yeah. I mean, well, the thing I'm thinking about now is something very much longer than this, but I'm thinking about a serial in chapters, and I have had a chance to see some of the serials I saw as a kid. You know, the all 20 chapters of Flash Gordon versus Ming the Merciless for Undisputed Mastery of the Universe, for instance, which adds up to really something like 7 or 8 hours of film. You know, there's so much. It's more than Fayad, you know, who runs 5.5 and 6 and 7 or something like that. And those things were meant to be seen, and also were structured, and very deliberately, in such a way that you definitely were not supposed to see all the chapters at the same time. You know, if you saw chapter 9 after chapter 10, something goes wrong. I mean, you're really supposed to have, you know, a week to stew in your own juice and to incubate that material, and
also to forget the details.
And to forget the details of the end.
So to take out the
Yeah, of course, yeah. And now they have been showing these things again, and you know, you sit through two blocks of Flash Gordon versus Ming the Merciless, for instance, and you know, you're totally wrung out by it, because all these, you know, these things begin to arise from seeing them in direct collision. That, well, I mean, I last saw them when I was 9 or something. Anyway, that's a very long time ago.
And that type of zunk has, you know, arisen. Or, you know, like, I guess there were rituals in the society where people like just dance or go hour, you know,
Yeah.
on and on and on. And now we watch Ming the Merciless 3 hours. The same sensation.
But I don't know how to, you know, there, something very long that you're going to have to see all of it, let's say, you know, it's pretty long, and you would like to see all of it within a day, for instance. If you're going to break it up into you know, not bite-sized morsels, but at least pieces that don't, you know, just, you know, give you cramps. Somehow that should be a different form, a different kind of form.
Just physically sitting, you know, for as many hours.
Yeah, well, it's impossible.
It's a weird thing the body to adapt to. It wasn't really made to stay in position. You know, I find myself, my legs going, my hands
Yeah,
going.
well, that happens to me all the time. Yeah.
I haven't really said all I had in mind about poetic justice. I don't think it's possible right now. It's too late. I mean, if you felt it took me a long time to see what I had to say about including section of nostalgia, give much longer. I saw the film 2 nights ago, and in general, I told you that I felt it was, I saw all kinds of things to like respect about it, and at the same time, I didn't care for it, and some things in it, I actively disliked. And now watching the film a second time, I really do my best. As I've done many times, I've gone back and seen films like Richter last year, which I hated the first time I saw it. The second time I saw it, I was I just tried to flatten out and see what was there again, and I had complete different experience. The second screening, the second scene for me was Poetic Justice. I felt the beginning was moving. I was happy. There was a more positive response, and then we just went all the other way, all completely the other way. And now I have very antipathetic feelings about Poetic Justice, almost completely in general. And I feel I should say that. I feel obliged to say that. And at the same time, I just think it's impossible to go into it in depth right now. I'm probably going to have to say it with my facts, and I don't feel it's right because you're not going to be here, but what I might do is make a tape of that, and of what I say, send it off to you, and you can reply to it. If I do it. Does anybody else want to say something? Ask something? That was a good one. Independently wealthy.
I'm independently. I'm independently poverty-stricken. I teach. I make a little bit of rental from my films, more than I sometimes expect to, but not very much.
Less than Dirty Harry.
Less than Dirty Harry, yeah.
Do you pay for all your processing and those?
Yes. Well, I don't pay for them yet. No, I have a presumably, I mean, no, by selling an eye. I mean, by selling an eye between my lab and my raw stock supplier, I am in debt for all of these films and for extra prints of many other films. I have not paid a single bill connected with, well, I won't say that, but I mean, I haven't paid, the two most crucial ones since last September. And I don't know what that amounts to. It amounts to $2,000 or something, I suppose. I'm not independently wealthy. I'm in debt. My father once told me that debt was the poor man's only adventure in life, and I'm starting to understand by that. Independently wealthy. Wonderful. Wonderful question.
You shoot. You seem to be shooting. I mean, it's not like, it seems you're pressed to get it, but it seems like you've got time to get it. And that's why I asked.
With reckless abandon.
He actually had.
It seemed like you're pressed.
He actually had a little meter that had to have clipped to his camera.
Yeah, that's in my head. That's in my head. No, I mean, I too am